Hi, everybody. Dr. Stu Hoffman here to talk to you today about something that has been a big issue in the chiropractic world. So many of you have issues with your licensing boards, and I want to share with you some of the things that happen so that we can hopefully try and reduce your risk. And when I tell you that the licensing board issues are big, it has skyrocketed over the last year. And I think some of the reason for that is kind of simple in that when I graduated in 1981 from Life College, if someone wanted to make a board complaint against me, at that time they had to find the board. You don't find them in the yellow pages, for those of you that even remember what the yellow pages is. And you had to actually find it in a separate section of the white pages under government agencies. And when you found them and made a long distance phone call, which cost you money to get to someone at the board, once they actually picked up, they would then send you by mail an actual complaint letter. You'd fill it out and send it back into the board. By the time all of that hassle happened, most people that it was just on the edge just went away because a lot of that emotion that was built up had already passed. But in this day and age, people need to get their feelings heard. And if you didn't listen to them, they're going to have it heard somewhere, whether it's just to be heard out or to hurt you. And the simple fact is that they can go on Google and in a nanosecond find the licensing board, and on the homepage, click here if you want to make a complaint. It takes nothing. And your licensing board has the legal obligation to follow up on any and every complaint that comes into them. So it's our job to defend you if and when you ever get one of these complaints. And if you're with ChiroSecure, and I hope you all are, then I would expect that you would know we need you to let us know as soon as you get a letter or a call from the board that they're just checking into something, they're investigating, or there was something that they need to follow up on. Any and all of that means that there's an investigation. So always contact whether it be us or whoever your carrier is, because they should be put on notice and you should have an attorney help respond to any complaint to the licensing board, no matter what it is. And I've had so many times that people will say to me, you know, I hear you, but this is such a stupid little thing. I'm going to just send in a response and be done with it. Well, that's fine, except 2 out of 3 of those people wind up coming back because now the board wants to interview them in person and they now need the attorney when we could have resolved it perhaps with a good response in the first place. So I want to share with you a few of the different situations that show up in front of the board and see if it rings a bell for you and makes it a little bit more of an awareness. Because remember, in all of our classes, I always talk about the fact that I don't want you to ever work from fear, but I do want to elevate your level of awareness so that you can practice in a way that is productive for your patients, a healthy way to build your practice, and at the same time, keep yourself safe. So here we go. The first thing that I want to review are some of the advertising issues that come up. And oh my, do they come up. Advertising issues, what about claiming a cure? You know, you don't have to say, I can cure you, but there's plenty of wording in some of the advertising that goes awry. And I'll come back to that in a minute. One of the common things is that the chiropractor in every state, they have different requirements, but they all require us to put your credentials with your name. You can't just advertise in a newspaper, let's say, as Dr. Stuart Hoffman. It has to be Dr. Stuart Hoffman Chiropractor. If you're in Florida, I believe it has to be Dr. Stuart Hoffman, chiropractic physician. So always know what your rules and regulations are. And if you're ever not sure, go to your licensing board's website and look up the rules and regulations and look up advertising. That's simple. So I put down neuropathy ads. And the reason that I did that, because that's going to bring us back to claiming a cure. A few years ago, neuropathy became such a hot button in the chiropractic profession. There were people teaching how to take care of neuropathy patients, how to advertise, how to attract all of these people in as a so-called new niche, a new market that's going to make you all this money. And that's great, except a lot of the so-called gurus that may have been teaching a lot of good things in terms of taking care of these patients didn't necessarily vet their own advertising. And so they're giving away these ads to people to start utilizing, and all of a sudden we had a flurry of licensing board allegations around the country, all related to neuropathy or diabetic neuropathy. And it wasn't just from one person teaching. This was a number of different people that we had these issues with. So in some of the neuropathy ads, they would put things like, when medicine has failed you, we can help. Well, that's claiming a cure, that's bad-mouthing another profession, and it's guaranteeing results. None of those things are okay. There's other ways to go about it. So just as an example, and I'm not suggesting even going down this path, but rather than having said that, I would have preferred if they would have said something to the effect that many of our patients that have come in with neuropathy issues have received so much benefit even when the care that they've tried in the past didn't work. And again, I'm not even encouraging you to go there, but you have to think of your words that you're utilizing when you're dealing with something that's specific, dealing with your licensing board. So just be aware of that. Let's talk about insurance companies. For those of you that bill insurance, and I know some people think that they have a cash practice, but in reality, most cash practices are prepaid insurance practices, because your patients turn in their insurance to their insurance, your bills. So either which way, insurance companies like to complain to licensing boards as a threat and to get back at the doctor and to scare all the other doctors about their billing. And what they used to do is go to the licensing board and say, hey, their billing is not in line with what it should be, and they're doing this, they're doing that. But the licensing boards have no jurisdiction over your fees. So they understood the game, the insurance companies, and they changed the allegation to be they're committing fraud based on how they're billing. And now your licensing board is coming to investigate you to see if you've committed fraud. And I'm not suggesting that you're going to lose any or all of these situations, but remember, when your licensing board is investigating you, they're doing their job, but they're not necessarily your best friend. So let's keep a balance there. And when they're looking at, let's say, a file of yours that the insurance company alleged fraud on, if they don't see proper records, or they see x-rays that are underexposed and you can't see anything, or anything else that they can find, they may not find fraud, but they may still comment you for something else that they get to see. So just keep that in mind. And then we have what you would expect, patient complaints. A patient may come in for low back pain and leave with neck pain. Or they may, you may do side posture and you cause a low back issue to flare up. Or the patient may feel worse and goes to the orthopedist who says, you should have never gone to the chiropractor. they caused this, they made it worse, you need physical therapy or whatever. And these are things that the patient feels wronged and decides to go and make a complaint against you, so no other patient has to suffer from what you've done to them. And what about your friend, so-called, down the street? I've had so many allegations from other chiropractors complaining about another doctor, and for a variety of reasons. And I can't say to you that some of them aren't totally justified, but what I want to really share with you is, what if a patient comes into you and says, oh, I went to Dr. Smith down the street and he was billing my insurance this, and I wasn't even in the office and he was billing that. Well, is it really your place to go and make a complaint against that chiropractor? I don't know. It's up to your own conscience. But what I would suggest to you is, if we're all in this together, why not think about calling that doctor and saying, you know, I just heard from a mutual patient that this is what was going on. And I want you to know that if it is, I'd really need to report you to the licensing board, because we have a requirement in certain states to do that. But I need to ask you first if it's true or not true. No, it's not true. All right, I need to put you on notice that if I hear it from anyone else, or anyone else hears it, you're going to wind up with a report to the board. So please do us all a favor and make sure your T's are crossed and I's are dotted. And to me, that is the right thing to do when we're dealing with each other. But you also, again, have to know what state you're in, because there is a requirement in certain states that you have a reporting obligation, and you don't want a board complaint against yourself for not reporting. So just be aware. What so many of you probably assume: what about sexual misconduct? And is it just patients? No, it can be staff, it can be anyone. So let's get into a little bit deeper conversation about this. I've had so many of these allegations against doctors. I'll give you one example right off the bat. I had a doctor that actually worked for me, and he bought one of my offices over time. But prior to that, he was a newer doctor in his mid to late 20s, good-looking guy, and the office that he was working in was in a 50,000 square foot health club. There was a full clinic residing inside the club. And so when he wasn't seeing patients, he was out on the floor meeting and greeting so that people knew he was there. He'd welcome them in and hopefully gain a whole lot more patients, which is exactly the right thing to do. And when he did that, he met one woman on the floor. They started talking. They found a lot in common, an attraction with each other, had nothing to do with the practice, but he wound up asking her out on a date, and they actually dated quite a bit for about 8 months. And when 8 months came around, he realized that he was in this over his head. She had different intentions than he now has for the relationship, and he just cut it off. And I talk about this in other classes. No one likes to get fired, whether it be your staff, your patient, or your husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it is. And so she wasn't ready for the relationship to end, and she decided she was scorned. And she actually went and made a complaint to the licensing board. So the licensing board calls him in, and she doesn't show up. So unlike the board, they actually dropped the case, and he thinks everything is just great. 2 years later, he receives another complaint in the mail from the licensing board. And it's the same woman 2 years later that never got over the relationship, refiled the claim. They have to now investigate again. This time the woman shows up. What the doctor never shared with us that came out in the hearing in the front of the board is that he had taken her on as a patient as well. But what do we do with people that are either family or boyfriends, girlfriends, cousins, this one and that one? We go in and we take care of them, and we never document, we never did an examination, we have nothing, which is exactly what he had on this woman. And then on top of that, I didn't know that he had this new treatment that he did, and it's called sex on the adjusting table. And all of this was going on in the office, where the licensing board actually took his license away for 60 days. And then they put him on probation for like 3 years. And when that happens, you start to lose, for those of you going back to working with insurance companies, you lose your credentials and your insurance rates go sky high. It is a mess for anyone in that situation. And we've had a lot of wrongful accusations as well. You know, I had a husband and wife who worked together, and what happened was they have a nice open adjusting area. And what they do is have a lay lecture for their patients once a week at the end of adjusting hours. So each week they switch off which doctor does the lecture. And this one week, one of the patients, who happens to be a whole family, called, we're running late. So the husband doctor goes and takes care of the family in the back room so that the wife can put on the lecture on time. And they did that. Everything was fine. They go into the room, and the woman, who is actually friends with the husband and wife doctor, says to the family, I gotta go make a couple of stops on the way home. Why don't you all go first, and I'll meet you at home, and we'll get going that way. So she does, and they all get adjusted. They leave. She gets adjusted. She walks out, says goodbye to the other doctor doing the lecture. She makes an appointment for the family at the front desk. And then on the way home, she makes a stop. But it's not the one you expected. It's at the police station, suggesting that he inappropriately was touching her. And the police come in to interview him. And not only does this blow up a marriage because she doesn't know what to believe, no one's in the room with them. It's a he said, she said. And it took about 2 years, because once she made the allegation to the police, she made the same allegation to the licensing board. And the police said, hey, there's no information here that would make us warrant going any further. So they dropped it. But the board took a long, long time until they eventually dropped it, because there was no evidence that anything actually happened. Now, I don't know if it did or it didn't, but this black cloud almost made them go bankrupt and almost made them divorce. If you knew how many times I was on the phone with this husband and wife, and they're still insured with us, they're still good friends all these years later, but these are things that can absolutely ruin you as a practitioner, as a business, as a family. You know, I had, when someone calls me up, as one person that is a good acquaintance of mine did, and they start out the conversation, hey Stu, I really effed up. I know exactly what happened. And in this case, he said, well, there was a patient, she was flirting with me, I was attracted, and we actually got together twice. But then I realized, oh my God, this is so wrong, and I wanted to cut it off. And he did. And so once he cut it off, she was scorned. And she went and made a complaint as you know, to his licensing board, and he received the complaint. I said, you got to go home and tell your wife. And here's my cell number, because I don't know what's going to happen. This was on a Friday, and you're probably going to need someone to talk to tomorrow. And sure enough, my phone rings the next morning, and my question was, where are you? And it was the Marriott, not unexpected. But I want you to also understand that I can go on and on with these stories, but it's not just the men. We have women that can get caught up in this also. And I had a female doctor who had a relationship with her staff, and they were tight as a couple for 3 years. And unfortunately, she wasn't proactive in calling us, because before she fired this person, I would have liked to talk to her, because there's ways to do things that can diminish the negative effects, hopefully, and de-escalate any situation that comes up. But no, she fired her before they even broke up. And so this employee actually sued her. She went to the police because she was intimate with this doctor in the office. She went to the licensing board, and then she went to an attorney to sue her for wrongful termination. And, you know, at that time, we covered the licensing board, and that's all we could cover, because wrongful termination is known as employer liability, which we now built in. We're the only policy that actually has defense for that within the ChiroSecure policy, but it wasn't there all those years ago. And no one covers criminal investigations. So you need to be aware of these things that take place. And the last thing I want to share with you on the sexual misconduct is, you may have another doctor in your office. Don't let them and or hopefully your staff be dating patients or each other. And I had a doctor call me up that he has a male associate in his office, and he's attracted to one of the staff members. What do I think? I think that he should go out on his own, and then he can date the staff member perhaps, but not while they're both under your employment. At least that was my recommendation. So enough of the sexual misconduct, because literally I can go on and on and on. Let's talk about the final thing I want to discuss in this topic with the board investigations, and that's your financial dealings with patients. So many patients come into the doctors, and I listed cash plans as one of the issues, but it's not just cash plans. When patients come in to see you, I want you to understand that there are double standards in life. And as chiropractors, we live through a lot of double standards, and that includes money. Patients, for some odd reason, think that it's okay that if they didn't have a miracle in the chiropractor's office after going and spending thousands upon thousands of dollars in other doctors' offices, they come to you, didn't have this miracle, and in fact, my neck got a little sore after the adjustment, I want all of my money back. Or they go to another doctor that said, just like I shared a little earlier, the orthopedist says, well, you should have never seen them. You wouldn't have even needed the physical therapy or the surgery or this or that if you didn't go to the chiropractor. They really did you wrong. Now they want a refund, and they want you to pay for their physical therapy or their co-payments on surgery or whatever it happens to be. We get all of these calls. In fact, that's the most common call we get in this office. And it's a business decision. So many doctors think that these refund issues are an emotional issue because the doctor feels wronged, and the doctor doesn't believe that they should give away anything, and sometimes they're right. But it really is a business decision, not an emotional one when it comes to refunds. So if you ever have a dealing like that, certainly let us know and we will coach you through it. But also cash plans. A lot of the licensing boards don't like prepaid plans. I was a master of prepaid. 25, 30, 35 years ago, I was one of a number of us that we're testing these cash plans with all of our patients. And I had cash plans that you signed up in my office for a year. And I had cash plans that if you had insurance, you took care of your deductible and co-payments for a year. If you stopped, we had a written agreement of what would happen in terms of refunding your money. And there are certain things you need to do with that to be in compliance with your licensing board. And a lot of doctors will call me up based on the cash plan that, well, the patient made a complaint to the board. I said, okay, let's take a look at this. Did you have a written agreement with the patient? Yeah, I used your brother's agreements and this and that, but I just changed them a little bit to, fit me better. Oh, you mean you took something that was legal and now changed it to be comfortable, but make it illegal? Okay. And a lot of the doctors put stuff in there that just doesn't make sense, or they have no agreement at all. It's just verbal. And in this day and age, you have to list out what you're proposing to them, what the cost is, and how it breaks down, and what happens when they dismiss themselves from care or you dismiss them. And you have to make sure you are not guaranteeing any results with this. And you have to also include what is part of this agreement. So many times doctors do not. And last but not least, let me just tell you this one piece. Never, ever, ever take an administrative fee when giving someone a refund. You have no right to that. And that's the number one trigger. People don't think that they were refunded appropriately. In fact, some of the states, the licensing boards have decided that if you put somebody on a plan and they're paying you on a monthly basis, even though you saw them intensively the first month and less, much less, month 8, 9, 10, etc., that what they paid you each month, if they paid you for 4 months and then quit, you owe them the 8 months back, or they don't have to pay you any difference going forward, because as far as they're concerned, the board, it was like joining a health club. You're paying the same amount no matter how much you use it or how little you use it. So your agreement goes a long way. Make sure that you have it either checked out like I once did by a healthcare attorney in your area, or go to someone that is credible and make sure you learn how to do these plans in the most proper way. So I hope this was beneficial to you today. And I just want to thank you for the opportunity to be with you again. And if you haven't already done it, I want you to get our informed consent packet, because it is what you should absolutely be using to protect yourself in your own practice. And we're going to give that to you, but we're going to even give you more. We're going to give you all the information you need to know on strokes. We're going to also give you the hottest thing on the market right now in the chiropractic world is the ADAMS study. And to thank you for being with you, just simply text to 480-500-6574. It'll ask you for your name and email address, and just put it in and you'll get a link texted back to you with all of this information. So I want to thank you for participating today, and we'll be back with you again.